Hi, Steven. Welcome to iElevate. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I was so excited to have you join iElevate this summer after knowing you for a couple of years. I know we met out in Seattle back in 2023, was it now, at UW's Neurodiversity at Work Research Conference that Dr. Anabi puts on. So that was really special, and we've stayed in touch since. Do you want to just tell our viewers your bio and where you're from?
Hi, everybody. My name's Steven. I'm from Maryland. Danielle and I got to know each other through the Neurodiversity at Work Research Workshop. Great conference put on by Dr. Hala Nabi, Andy Bagel, and Kathy Dalberger. I'm an autistic social worker, and I was diagnosed at age 5, so pretty early on, but I'm not the earliest that you can get diagnosed, and sort of lived my life, on the spectrum, and it's been a pretty good journey so far, ups and downs, but happy to be a professional and self-advocate, kind of giving back to the community.
Tell me, Steven, what brought you to that conference where we met that year, UW? Why were you there?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's just such a great conference made up of people who really want to see development and progress in the neurodiversity at work research infrastructure. The pipeline coming through is just incredible. And I think some conferences you kind of have a general like autism or general employment or focus, right? But what I really appreciated about this conference was that it dove in deeply into some of the nuts and bolts of neurodiversity at work programs and kind of talked about, where we've been and where we are and where we want to go with the literature. So it's just a great group of dedicated individuals in all facets of the field in all areas of the country, including internationally. And I think that's just really what I appreciated about it. And it's held at different places every time, which I think gives us a nice little change of scenery sometimes. So hopefully I'll be able to make it up to Pittsburgh this year.
As somebody who is a self-advocate, but then you're also involved in the work, what's something that you wish you could see happen more frequently right now in conversations around neurodiversity and work? Like, what is something that you're trying to focus your life on this year?
I think my sort of focus or interest is around evidence-based practices, which is really informed by my experience as a practitioner, sometimes just kind of winging it, right? A lot of professionals don't have sort of those, those toolboxes, right? They kind of have things that they've done before that work. We live in a wicked world, right? Where we live in a world where things are changing all the time, and sometimes what was true yesterday is not true anymore. And so thinking on your feet is really important. So I think we should be giving our workforce a great foundation of education and training, but also like knowledge about like how to work with people and using their experience as practitioners to inform that research. That might be a nice thing. The community-based participatory research, but also including, right, peer mentor class, the sort of specialist class of, here's what I've done before, here's what's working, here's what's not, and then using research to back up some of those claims and build better practices for the future. So, as a receiver of services, but as a clinician myself, that's something that's really important to me.
I like that. I feel like I personally experienced that this past year of my life when I was working in research at the College of Health Professions. Stroke research, I was really noticing that there was like a divide between that clinical side and the research side and the users and the research design. And I think it just depends on, where you go and where you are, but we just need more conversation around what types of research needs to be out there, and then can we involve more stakeholders in the design up front of studies because yeah, I think that would just really be that preventative approach instead of a band-aid approach to some of the challenges we're having even informing policy right now in the United States. So you were at NIH, and what was your favorite part while you were at NIH? What was the favorite experience of that? And I know you just left, so tell us a little bit
Yeah,
there.
yeah, thank you. It's been a really interesting experience working at, a pretty high level, sort of seeing a bird's eye view of what's going on across the country in different states, seeing how things are developed differently in regards to services for autistic people and people with disabilities. We were an autism shop, but we worked with disability research as well. I just really appreciated the team there, the Office of Autism, the National Autism Coordinator, ONAC, led by Dr. Susan Daniels, the team there was just so collaborative, and we really were a dedicated team. In my role in particular, I helped, work on reports and communications for the office. The role that I think I cherish the most is really getting to talk to the community and learn sort of, throughout the country and the world what's going on and using some of my social work skills, right? Some of the needs assessments, some of those communications and listening skills of, what are communities facing and how can the government help? There's so many federal resources and state resources for autism and disability, and sort of helping be that connection between some of that knowledge and that experience and the resources was something I really appreciated.
I'm hoping that, with iElevate, you can help guide our team too a little bit on how we can be a force for positive change in policy, especially right now with a lot of cuts in research. Diving into the social work piece, where are you at with your journey of being a social worker, and kind of what is your hope this year to focus on your clinical practice, and how would that, I think we don't know yet, but I'm sure that that will definitely inform, if you were to get back into research and policy in the future, the changes that you would want to make. So tell us a bit about that social work journey this year and what's on the horizon.
There's never enough to say about social work. I mean, I'm in California right now, helping out with my grandparents, and I'm not a geriatric social worker. I work in the autism field and disability. But I think one thing, for your viewers to know, and maybe some already do, is disability is like sort of a natural progression of being human, right? Some people become disabled earlier in their lives, others become disabled when they're older. Disability is sort of just a fact of being human. Some situations we are inaccessible to us, while others are accessible. In terms of disability, it just depends on the nature of your, disability and how that, kind of how that looks. Kind of a long way around the question. Disability and social work and autism and elder care are all super connected by the way that you approach people. And for me, although I don't know like the specific mechanisms of elder care or some of the resources available, the methods of finding the answers and learning what people are going through are pretty much the same. If I'm talking with my clients who are autistic, I might be validating or use certain questions or kind of hear for certain keywords. So if someone's like, oh, that feels good, or I don't like that, I'll be like, can you tell me more about that? Because that gives you, more information as to, how you might approach moving forward with that. Kind of the same thing with elder care. So I learned a little bit, but the day to day, right? So I was talking with my aunt yesterday. It seems like right now we're talking about sort of hour by hour care with my grandparents. And in sort of the typical day to day, we think about our week, right? Or we think about our month, planning stuff. You're seeing people, you're doing things, maybe you're going to work. And so to have like a different perspective, so I'm thinking about maybe, how are you envisioning your life on a time scale, and what support can you use to make it be? It's kind of like a gear right now, right? It's not that efficient to think about your life in an hour by hour. Of course, maybe you might need that to stay safe, but is it more efficient? Can you kick into another gear maybe if you have that support for you to think about it in a week's? I guess how much time can you think about in one chunk? Thinking about it year by year is probably too much, right? Hour by hour is probably too granular. So how much can you zoom out for a week or a month at a time? So in my social work journey, I'm thinking about this kind of stuff all the time. I'm out in the community, if I'm taking the bus or if I'm in the roads, I'm like, our infrastructure, how is this impacting people with disabilities or even people without disabilities going to work, getting around? I'll always be thinking about this stuff. And I'm really glad I chose the field of social work because it's, I think, a really good fit for the way my brain works.
Yeah, I feel that way about being an OT. I feel like I'm like always grappling with these really philosophical questions. Great
Yeah.
book, by the way, is called, I think it's Being Mortal, Atul Gawande, which is really like a deeper conversation on Western philosophy on aging and disability, and how we have segmented in our culture people who have disabilities and people who don't, when really we are all disabled at some point in time in our lives. And so why would we not think about inclusion from the beginning? It doesn't make any sense. I just did a talk for Summit Education for providers last week. Social work wasn't included in that. We had speech, PT, and OT, but I was talking about transition planning and barriers to independence for young adults who have a disability. And we think about transportation as being this huge issue. Like it's not talked about. And we have really like rough physical barrier, infrastructure barriers in our country, depending on where you live. If you fall and break your leg, how are you going to get to the grocery store if you can't drive? And that's where, you hope you have that community and you hope you have someone who can come and pick you up or maybe use Uber. But what if you're in a rural area down a dirt road, right? Or like you lack that Wi-Fi access. We still have a lot of issues with that in rural
Mhm.
America. So I can't speak more to that conversation around transportation because it comes up a lot for barrier to employment. There are good people who have tried to do research to inform policy to help with public transit in America and getting a better system that really I think it'd be nice to see like a system that encompasses all states, not just some areas having some public transit. Kind of to derail there, I just wanted to highlight that as a really core theme for our clients and our viewers and things that they struggle with. Even the term disability is isolating in the sense of like, this is everybody. And yes, maybe you're able-bodied at one point in time, but you don't know when that's going to change. And we all grow. And the Atul Gawande talks a little bit about in our culture how we're so focused on quantity of life instead of quality of life
Mhm. Mhm.
in Western culture, and that the drug companies are all trying to keep you alive longer. And but are you having a quality of life if you're living that long? So, like, what is it, quantity or quality, right? That's a deeper philosophical question for another day. But I think for those of us in our profession, to me, it's about quality in the moment, depending on what population you're working with. Yeah, I'm excited to
Mhm.
kind of journey this path with you over the summer and see where it goes. And I know you're going to do some coaching for us potentially. Is there any particular thing that you love to coach on or work with clients on? I know you have your own business too, so feel free to talk with us about the evolution of that.
The interesting thing for me with coaching is just kind of getting a sense of what people feel, right? What are they thinking? Kind of pulling some of that out, using some of those therapeutic methods. But at the end of the day, it's really just kind of like being a sounding board. Like a lot of people range from I need these executive functioning skills, right, to I just need someone to check if my thinking is is helpful or accurate. And I think sometimes it is, right? I think a lot of people are on the right track, and some things that we have to think about by ourselves. We live in a very isolating world, and we don't always have people to be that sounding board or people that we trust. If people are like, I'm just thinking about it this way, does that make any sense to you? Or, can you tell me more about like how this comes about with thinking? And I'll be like, yeah, that's a really good, way to think about it. You might also consider, A, B, and C, and then I'll sort of dive in a little bit more. Like, where do you think that comes from? What are some other similar experiences? So someone can come to me with this, like with A issue or concern, and depending on what would be helpful for them, I'm happy to kind of dig a little deeper into where, is there like an actual issue that's going on? Like sometimes you come with, maybe you might see this in OT or PT, physical therapy, right? So someone comes with one issue and then it's actually hiding a separate,
Yeah.
deeper issue. People don't always need therapists. I am a therapist by trade, so I wear many hats, job coach, case manager, therapist. Some people, when they ask you to be a coach, they're not actually looking for you to be a therapist. So I think knowing your boundaries there, right? Not trying to pry, not doing stuff that is unhelpful or not relevant. And
Yeah.
so really listening to the person and seeing what they're looking for. Sometimes it's just like hey, does this make any sense to you? Yeah, yeah, based on my experience. And then I might ask some questions just to kind of get them thinking and reflect it back. That's really kind of what I enjoy is getting to know people a little bit selfishly in my brain. Like every person I talk to is a data point, right? So in the life of social norms and kind of figuring out the rules of life and stuff, like the more people I meet and talk to, the more data I'm getting about what different possibilities of existing there are. Unless something's really hurting you or not helping, I'll consider that as an option to move forward. So some people do things this way, like, oh, okay, is that helping you? Is that, and so that's sort of what I'm thinking about is how do we just help people live, right, the highest quality of life and making sure that they're getting their needs met.
I like that conversation around helping and hurting because it's There are those conversations of talks within the neurodiversity community of I've been harmed more by going to OT speech as a kid, or I have these memories of going to OT, whatever, social work therapy as a kid. And unless if you find the right fit coach or therapist, it can be a repelling experience. It's like I actually am working with my own coach this summer, and one of the things I was speaking about is just like attracting the right type of client to me because not everybody is good fit for your own personality as a coach or a therapist. And I think my evolution of, oh, let me be the expert versus like I'm
Mhm.
not an expert at all. And I really, really am just here to support this person in this moment and how can I do that? And I think a lot of conversations, at least in our field, OT has been leaning on the consultative model and like a coaching approach as the most effective mode of interaction in the sense of like you're there to support action steps and goal attainment for your clients'
Mhm.
goals, and then
Mhm.
you're there to find and pull resources and bits and pieces of information that they might not have had access to and kind of bring. At least that's the thing that I've really identified with the most in the therapy community, in the sense of like I think that there could be that negative experience for a teen young adult coming in like I've got to go to therapy, you know what? Like why do I need to go to therapy? I really enjoy what you said about that and just like asking somebody, can you dive deeper into your thoughts there and like exploring that space. So, California right now, is that just for work or fun?
I'm out here helping care for my grandparents. Yeah, my grandma had a stroke a few years ago, and they're just getting older, so kind of helping, making sure that they're getting the support they need, and making sure that we're not having any falls, and everyone's able to do what they need to do during the day.
When you come back, you're on the East Coast. Will you stay up in the DC, Maryland area this year, or are you planning on doing some more travels now that you're not working for the NIH?
Yeah, I always have travels, things I'm doing. I I'm pretty fidgety as it is, and so that includes where I am physically staying in one spot, either with my hands or with my body. It's hard sometimes. Yeah, so I'll be staying in DC, but popping around and seeing folks and getting out there. So it's a great time to be a social worker. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening and a lot of different things that people need. So, for curious people who want to help, social work is a great field.
Steven, is there anything you want to share with the viewers today? A little deeper dive on your coaching practice, your consulting practice this year. We can link to it beneath this video and any other resources you want to share.
I run Sunflower Life Strategies, neuro-affirming coaching firm for folks on the spectrum and those who identify as neurodivergent. I help run coaching sessions for groups as well as individuals, and it's just a really great time to kind of help folks think about how they can be more accommodating to folks on the spectrum or those who are neurodivergent. I help with college support programs, other organizations. If you're on the spectrum, learning a little bit more about yourself, kind of how you've gotten here, your journey, feel free to reach out to me. If you're looking for trainings or someone who's a self-advocate to come talk to folks in your program, I'm happy to do that as well, thinking about how we can sort of build career skills while we're in the workplace, but also prepare folks before they get to work, and making sure that we're able to not only get the job, but keep the job is really the name of the game. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.